Okay, but at the beginning, I'd like to, not only I, but we would like to say to express our deep gratitude, especially to Ministry of Culture and National Heritage, and personally to Maciej Dido, he's over here. Thanks for long-term and never-ending support and possibility that we can create this research for the fourth time, and I hope we'll be continuous this cooperation also in following years.
And we would like to thank you, Krakow Technology Park, as well as Ministry of Culture and National Heritage, for inviting us, me and Michał, to present this research.
Thank you so much. It's all about fun, so we like it so much. Okay, some general presentation, some general information about the study. The general aim of the whole project is simple. We want to deliver high quality and very actual data on Polish market of gamers. We believe this data is relevant both for game dev companies themselves, but also for media and for policymakers, not only from the Ministry of Culture, but from all possible institutions of public administration that may need or use such data to create some tools of support and stuff like that. Every year, it's the fourth wave of this study already. Every year we are adding some special module to the basic field of research. This time this module will be dedicated to children. So we ask parents who have playing children to answer some special questions. The general age scope of the poll is from 15 to 55 years old. It was a poll made at a sample of up to 2,000 people, depending on the very question. It is highly actual because the research was conducted in mid-April, and a very representative study. The outcomes was weighted by some special weighting tools, statistical tools, so it fits to the Polish general structure of society regarding gender, age, some socio-economical status and stuff like that. There's just one important methodological remark I want to do right now, because due to some changes in the legal framework and how social research may be done also in internet, it was no longer able to do the RTS methodology, real-time sampling methodology, that we used the last 3 years. So we had to change the methodology to random sampling. It still is highly representative, but you just need to be a bit cautious when you are looking at the numbers from previous years, especially when you are tracking some slight trends. That's why we added some special methodological remarks on some of the slides.
Yes, as Wojtek has already mentioned, this year's survey was conducted using a different research methodology. Nevertheless, we decided to present to you also the results of the previous edition in some slides. So it starts from the very basic question, how many gamers are there among Polish internet users? Almost 8 out of 10 Polish internet users aged 15 to 55 declared to have played a video game at least once during a month preceding a study. Here is worth emphasizing that, as always, we distinguish the following platforms: PC and notebooks, video consoles, web browser, mobile devices, and social network. As you see, mobile games are definitely the most popular. Almost 60% internet users in Poland play mobile games. The share of gamers playing on PC in installed games or via web browser is similar. About 1/3 of the respondents indicated these platforms. 28% mentioned a console, while 26% social network. This year's results clearly show two obvious trends. For the first one, the position of mobile devices as the most popular gaming platform is becoming increasingly stronger, The second one, the difference between the number of PC players and console players in Poland is getting smaller and smaller. I would like to remind you, based on last year's edition of our report, that even then, in case of physical distribution, it was console responsible for 65% of revenues. And now a few words about profile of Polish gamers.
Slowly, the stereotype of male gamer is fading into the past. During last 4 years and Polish gamers research results that are helping to break the prevailing misconception in Polish society that gamers are almost entirely male, we see in 2018 that 51% of all gamers are women. This is the result of the increase in popularity of mobile gaming on Polish market and number of mobile gamers where women are dominating. If some of you remember our report, The State of Polish Video Game Industry, that is available for free at polishgamers.com, by 2019, 29% of revenues on Polish gaming market will be generated by mobile games and mobile gamers, where women are dominating. Women are also dominating when it comes to social platform. When it comes to male gamers, we can clearly see that men are dominating on console platforms, on PC installed platforms, and when it comes to web browser platforms, the difference between women and men is not so high. 53% of men choose web browser platforms.
Looking at age, it's quite an easy slide, but I want to stress, in fact, two things. We are like changing or tearing down another stereotype about the age of the gamers. Please look at the cohorts from 15 to 24 and 35 to 44 years. So the older one is bigger, yeah, than the first one. And we have already 14% of players who are from 45 to 55 years old. We are not checking how about the even older players, but one could assume we start to have such. It means gamers are not even no young or youth people. They are not even not young adults. They are just adults, yeah, and it's a totally major market in that sense.
The place of residence of Polish gamers do not differ much from the general internet population age 15 to 55. It's worth recalling here, especially for our foreign guests, that half of the Polish population live either in the countryside or in small towns with a number of inhabitants up to 20,000. The same situation, similarity with general internet population, applies regarding to declared financial status of their households. 16% describe it as poor, 42% as average, and 34% as good. 8% of respondents found it difficult to identify or did not want to disclose this information. As in previous years, when analyzing pivot tables with the results of these studies, we notice a good financial situation is most often declared by console players.
And when it comes to education level among players playing on different platforms, the education level is rather similar. 37% of all gamers have secondary or higher education, and 26% have primary education. When it comes to occupations, the latest result of Polish Gamers Research report confirmed the trends that became visible the years before, that games have become entertainment form very popular among working people. Because please notice that 50% of Polish gamers are permanently employed and 11% have a part-time job. And this is a really, really good sign for gaming industry, considering those two groups' buying power.
And it's a good moment to answer why people play in Poland. Not surprisingly, the most popular motivation for playing games, regardless of the platform, is the intent to rest, to relax, or to deal with stress. But looking at the distribution of other motivations to play on different platforms, we can distinguish two groups. On the one hand, we have PC games installed and console games. On the other hand, mobile, social, and browser. The first one engages us much stronger. Thanks to them, we want to feel emotion, adrenaline, or desire to compete. These are the ones that allow us to play a role, take a part in epic adventure, for example. Interestingly enough, console players are much more likely than others to seek interaction with other gamers. Without a doubt, it is related to a huge popularity of football games such as FIFA or Pro Evolution Soccer in Poland on consoles. On the other hand, we have the other platforms. On the mobile devices, Facebooks, or in browser, we play primarily to kill time, to kill boredom.
And the data collected for Polish Gamers Research report presents gameplay preferences in terms of the presence or absence of other gamers. We found out that Polish gamers, a significant majority of Polish gamers prefer to playing alone. 46% of Polish gamers always play alone, and 35% usually play alone. We are very much interested in those who decide to play with someone else. 21% usually play with other people, and 9% always play with other people. And we wanted to find out what type of game they play and on which platforms, looking for some significant differences between platforms. And what did we find out? Here are some interesting highlights. Console gamers are more likely to play with other people when it comes to sport games, as well as first-person shooters. And console gamers are basically the most social type of gamers in our gaming population. When it comes to PC gamers, they are very likely to play first-person shooters, mobile games, and war games with other people. And what's really interesting that social gamers are very likely to play strategy games with others.
Okay, now looking at the different genres of games and their popularity on various platforms. With PC installed games, we have in fact three types of games that are similar in popularity: first-person shooters, adventure games, and action games. With browser games, we have a very strong position of logic games, then card games and action games. With consoles, of course, sports are leading with nearly 50% of indications, followed by adventure and action games. With mobile games, there is even a stronger domination of logic games of 55%. Then we have action and card games. And then social games, we have, again, logic, then card games and action games.
Okay, this year, my friends, we decided to analyze for the first time also the model of consoles on which Polish players play the most. We asked them, which model of console have you played on recently? As you see in the responses, the previous generation of console is quite numerous. Obviously, we have PlayStation 4 as a leader, while its main global rival, Xbox One, is only the fourth. It's clear that Xbox 360 users are not necessarily willing to convert to the current generation of console. It is also worth noting an unusual fact comparing to the players from the United States or from Western Europe, that the presence of Nintendo console in Poland is only symbolic. And now when we look at the distribution of popularity of mobile operating system, we see clearly that Polish market is dominated by Android with only 11% share of iOS. It's also quite interesting and in my personal opinion quite funny fact that still 5% of respondents have mobile phones with officially dead operating system, because as you know, last year Microsoft officially gave up on further supporting Windows Phone.
And here we have some interesting highlights about frequency and time spent on playing games. We found out that regardless the platform when it comes to social games, web browser games and mobile games, 30% of gamers declare that they play virtual farms every day. That's quite interesting. 30% of PC gamers and console gamers play RPG and MMOs for more than 120 minutes during single session. What's more, when it comes to mobile platform, we play shorter. However, 6% of mobile gamers who are Virtual Farm fans, they spend more than 2 hours playing their favorite title. So similar time, like in the case of PC and console gamers. And when it comes to social platforms, we found out that social casino games are the most engaging and addictive type of games for social gamers.
Okay, looking at sources of new games, how do we purchase or how do we acquire the games that we play? Then apart from the free-to-play games, it's the highest one here, we still prefer to buy box versions of games than to buy digital copies of them. Looking at the level of piracy, it's this one. It seems to be stable. It's 15%. It used to be more or less that high in the former research we did. Of course, we do not know if it's really 15% because you can imagine that not all the people are very honest in answering such a question, even if they believe the poll is anonymous as it is. Looking at the digital platforms, we have in fact one king in this castle. It's of course Steam, but Steam is then followed by the two platforms that are linked with consoles, so PlayStation Network and Xbox, and then by Origin.
Okay, because we already know where Polish players buy games, it is worth answering the question of how many of them actually do it. And as you see, a lot of depends on the platform. Slightly more than 40% of PC and console players buy games. In case of mobile devices, only 11% of them decide to spend any money in App Store or in Google Play. A relatively small percentage of users on all platforms decide to purchase add-ons. The highest percentage was declared by users of browser games, which is consistent with the business model adapted in these games. Again, mobile players are the least willing to spend any money.
When it comes to popularity of payment methods, we can observe that in case of console gamers and PC-installed gamers, the most popular method of payments on the internet is internet transfer, and credit and debit card on the internet are the third most popular method of payment. These two groups, console and PC gamers, are also very likely to pay for games in offline shop using cash or credit card, as well as use scratch card with activation code. When it comes to web browser gamers and social network gamers, one of the most popular methods of payments are premium SMS. 53% of social network gamers pay through premium SMS. However, when it comes to web browser gamers, according to the declaration of our respondents, premium SMS are as popular as internet transfers, 44%. And this is a really good sign for game developers due to the high commission when it comes to premium SMS that needs to be paid to mobile operators.
So, that's my turn. As in previous year, this year we also asked our respondents a detailed question about an average expenditure on particular platforms, both for new game and for add-ons to them. On our website, just after the end of the current Digital Dragons conference, you'll find a detailed division of this data. During our presentation today, I will quote only a few interesting facts. First of all, Polish players on PC are still very price sensitive, and they are not willing to accept the alignment of PC games prices to the level of Western Europe. Only 19% of them declared that they spend on average more than 100 Polish zloty on new game. In the case of console users who have been accustomed to higher prices for years, this percentage is much higher. 58% spend more than 100, although it is worth noting that only 16% of them are ready to accept average expenditure above 200 Polish zloty. In case of browser and social games, we spend money exclusively on add-ons to them. The most frequent declared level of expenditure, it was about 25% of responses, is the range from 10 to 19 zloty. About 1/3 of mobile players who spend any money at all declared that they pay no more than 5 zloty for a new game. However, it is interesting to note that a very similar percentage spent from 10 to 19 to add-ons to mobile games. So on mobiles, very often we pay more for add-ons than for a new game.
Okay. Registration. Registration has always been an issue in gaming, and it maybe becomes even a hotter topic concerning, in Polish, RODO, in English, GDPR. Patricia wanted me to ask you in this moment how many of you already implemented GDPR in your companies, but as I'm not sure how much are you ready to answer this question, I will not ask it, but anyway, it is an issue for sure. Generally speaking, from this chart, we know that 6 out of 10 gamers do not want to register while entering a game, and they are ready to exit the service. In general, it's more or less the same in all platforms that require this fact. Looking at specifically some kinds of information that we may be open to give or not, we do not have a problem more or less with gender, is the first one, but then even already with age and interest, you see it's like under 50%, so we are not really that eager to give this information, and information like email address, our place of residence, and especially phone number is something that we will not give to the game operator, no matter what are the circumstances, what the cost of such action or non-action would be.
Okay, and now a few words about eSport, which was added to our research last year. This time we decided to divide the question into several separate issues. First of all, we asked the gamers about their level of interest in this subject. And as you can see, 28% are interested in eSport, with 8% saying definitely yes, and 20 saying rather yes. And now let's focus on these people, these 28%. More than 60% of them watch or track the games of professional computer players at least once a month. Slightly more, 64% of those interested in eSport declared that they watch the computer games live at least once in the last 12 months during physical events such as Intel Extreme Master in Katowice, PGL in Krakow, Warsaw Games Week, or Poznań Game Arena. Let's analyze 2 more issues related to eSport. As last year, we asked about where do you follow eSport competition, and most people indicated YouTube streaming. But what is interesting that this year, on the 2nd position appeared Facebook, pushing Twitch to the 3rd place. I suspect this is due to the exclusive contract announced at the beginning of this year between ESL and Facebook for transmission of its tournaments and leagues in highly popular in Poland game Counter-Strike Global Offensive. It's also a very interesting thing that is very clear that still eSports for gamers is completely not associated with traditional television. That answer was indicated by only 7% of respondents. And finally, we also analyze the answer, which of the eSport games are you interested in the most? The obtained answer unambiguously point to an interesting, strongly undeveloped fragment of the Polish eSports scene, FIFA series. Unfortunately, due to current restriction of IP owners, official FIFA tournaments are quite rare comparing to the tournaments in 3 consecutive titles on the list. I mean, Counter-Strike, League of Legends, or World of Tanks.
This year, we are going to present to you highlights of absolutely new and really important segment of our study devoted to the habits of children playing games, age 7-17, analyzing the responses of their parents. It was really important for us to find out more on frequency, time spent on playing games, the importance of PEGI system while choosing games for your child, and many, many more. So among our respondents, it's really important we both had parents that were gamers and those who were not playing games.
Okay. Now, generally speaking, the people we asked how many of them do have gaming children. 2/3 answered yes, we have gaming children. As we have people in the poll that do not have children at all, we may assume that the absolute majority of people do have gaming children. And out of this 2/3, again, and it's quite interesting data, over 2/3 declare that they do play with their children. Of course, this declaration may mean a lot of things. It may mean when my child installed a game, I watched once on this game to see what she or he is playing. But of course, it may mean much more. It may mean some common doing or relation. So does it mean that gaming is like a family bonding or family making phenomena? I'm not sure if we can say it like that, but for sure the reality is much more complex than many people think.
Okay, when we ask parents, both playing and non-playing, are you guided by PEGI when choosing a game for your child or children, only 28% of respondents replied in the affirmative. 24 said they knew what the PEGI system is but did not follow it when making such a purchase, while nearly half of the respondents say simply they don't know what the PEGI system actually is. We also ask parents a separate question: are you setting restrictions or parental controls on the device your child is playing on? Looking at this data, it should be borne in mind that this is the perspective of the parent, which can sometimes be more a wish than reality. But unfortunately, it's quite visible that the older the child is, the less attention will be paid by parents to control games, and some break-even is when the child is about 10 years old. Let me make a personal digression here. I'm convinced, and I say this as a parent, that the parents are who have the primary responsibility for choosing the right games for their children. Therefore, it's worth working on further popularization and building awareness and solutions such as PEGI system. As you see, unfortunately, our research shows there is still much to be done.
That's correct. We wanted also to find out what are the sources of new games among children, and we found out that 66% of Polish children play free games on the internet or on their smartphone. 31% of parents buy games chosen by children, and 30% of children receive new games as a gift from family and friends. And this is really sad. Only 23% of parents buy games chosen by themselves. And what we learned more, 16% of children borrow games and 13% buy games by themselves using their own money. And 5% of parents admit that they have no idea and no control on sources of new games that their children play. And when it comes analyzing the sources of games, we wanted to find out how many games were bought. And we analyzed the group of parents that are buying games. We found out that during last year, 21% of parents bought at least one game or 4 and more games. 31% of parents, and this is the majority, bought 2 games, and 24% bought 3 games. And when it comes to spendings, usually parents spend between 50 and 200 zloty for games.
Okay, it's another simple slide about, in fact, gender equality, because as you can see, in 2 types of games, so mobile games and social games, we have nearly the same level of popularity among boys and girls. Then in 3 other categories, of course, it's a bit more popular to play them within the boys group, but the difference is not that strong. So I personally would expect it would be much higher. Maybe the difference is significant in console, but anyway, it's not that much. And then jumping to next slide. Looking at the age of the playing children, we have more or less this stable level of popularity with mobile games, and all of the others are gaining popularity the older the children are, with some small exceptions. So PC games and especially console games are again losing popularity in the oldest group of children, in fact, of the youth. Okay, and looking at the genres of games that are especially popular between boys and girls, I just chose 5 or 4 most popular. You will find full data again in the report, but here we see a non-equal situation, and within boys we have adventure sports simulators, so racing games, first-person shooters, then strategic, and with girls we have educational, nearly half of the answers, then adventure, logic and action.
And when it comes to frequency and time of playing by children comparing to adult gamers, we found out that among children age 8 and 10, there can be observed a really significant growth of time spent on playing games on each of 5 platforms. It means web browser games, social games, mobile games, console games, PC games. More than 10% of children aged 8-10 play for more than 120 minutes during a single session. What's also interesting that on each of 5 platforms, regardless of the platforms, 40% of children spend at least 31 to 60 minutes playing games during single session. We can also see that in comparison to girls, boys spend more time playing games, and 30% of boys spend more than 2 hours playing PC installed games. When it comes to children and adult gamers, we see that children are more active players only when it comes to mobile platform. And what's really, really interesting, that the most active gamers in children group are children up to 7 years old. 55% of children up to 7 years old play games every day or a few times a week.
Okay, and it was just several highlights, and as we said at the beginning, this particular presentation right now, if you enter to polishgamers.com, you can download it just right now. But just after Digital Dragons, I mean on Wednesday, you find all details, information, details, data about all these aspects. I mean expenditures, about children, about frequency, etc., etc.
We know that even for this half an hour, it was a lot of data. As Michał said, you will find even more on the internet, but anyway, if you have any kind of questions to what we have presented or to the research in general, we are here to answer them. Thank you. Any of you? I will give up my mic.
Everyone is waiting to check details.
So please enter polishgamers.com right now.
Hello. My question is, your research was done on people between 15 and 55, right? Why only that group? Why not 55 and above?
Actually, this is some kind of trend in Poland to check this particular group. And we deeply feel that in the near future, I mean, probably maybe even this year, it will be a good idea simply to create additional research among children. There is possibility to ask children between 10 and 15 similar question, but we cannot do it via current research methods. We have to involve probably another ministry, Ministry of Education, to help us to do it properly. Because the most important thing is to do such research correctly, to receive data which are based to whole population.
All right, but that was like below 15. Yeah, what about 55 and above?
Answering that part of question, in previous research, we noticed that the interest of gaming above 55 is going down very rapidly. So we put attention to segments up to 55.
All right, thank you.
I will add something up on top of that, because it's a generational issue, in fact. So when people started to play, and how old are they now? Yes, we have, like in Poland, games started to be available more or less in the middle of the 80s, then second wave, beginning of the 90s, and this more or less makes this 55 years old. But this question is very well made, and as I've shown you at the slide number 6, I believe, we have already 14% of people between 45 and 55. We don't know how exactly old they are. Probably most of them is rather closer 45 than 55. But anyway, in coming years, we will have some numbers of gamers who are 55 and above, so we'll surely include them also in the future research. It's the time right to do that, so yeah.
So thank you very much again. If there is not any further question, so please just big round of applause for our panelists. So thank you Wojciech, thank you Patrycja, thank you Michał.